Hi everyone, and welcome back to another video. Today's video, I'm super excited not only to share with you, but also just to go over for my own sake, because this video is going to be all about my makes of 2021. I'm going to go over exactly what I made, how it turned out, what went wrong, what went right, and what I learned from each and every project. So let's dive right into the video. So right off the bat, what's interesting about the year 2021 for me, other than the obvious of what's going on in the world, is the fact that my first make of 2021, or rather of late 2020, was my fourth child. So I was recovering from having a baby and, being postpartum and lazing around the house for a lot, like the first few months of 2021, just taking it easy. So it's been really interesting to look back on this year and just see how I've kind of slowly gotten the wheels rolling and faster and making more and more things, and just how that process has gone. So my very first make of 2021 were my first ever pair of handmade shoes. So this project was very interesting. It really pushed me to my limits. Making a pair of shoes is really hard. And if you want to try it, I would recommend not starting with a pair of shoes like I did. It's basically like the most complicated pair of shoes that I could have attempted. Hand welted, hand stitched, more complicated design. It was really challenging, and also considering the fact that I was doing most of it with a baby tied to me in a baby carrier the whole time, I'm pretty impressed that I got that done. Okay, so in terms of how the shoes turned out, honestly, I still love these shoes. I'll always keep them even though I'm not really wearing them. The main thing about them that turned out not so great, apart from the fact that they're pretty rough, my first pair of shoes, was the fit. So the reason the fit is not the greatest is because I bought a pair of vintage lasts, where they only had a size and a half longer than my size, and the size was also narrower than my feet width. So I had to do a lot of reshaping to these lasts to get them shorter but also wider. And as a beginner, that's really challenging to get right the first time. And one of the lasts was slightly bigger than the other one. So there was just little things like that where it's like, I like the shoes. It's cool that I made them, but I'm not really gonna wear them very much at this point, especially now that I've made some more shoes that I like a lot better. The main thing I also learned from this was the importance of using leather that's thin enough. My tendency is to want to use leather that's too thick, and that's what I did with the first pair of shoes. They were pretty thick, sturdy, and very stiff on the feet. So the lesson I learned was to use leather that's thin enough, and also don't try things that are just way too advanced for where you are. But finally, I guess the third lesson I could say that's more of a positive lesson is you can achieve a lot more than you think is possible. Making these shoes was a total act of faith for me. It just seems so bizarre to me, the thought of making shoes, but at the same time, I was very drawn to it, and I was just like, whatever, I'm just gonna try it. I'm just gonna spend a bunch of money, get a bunch of materials, and just try to make shoes. What bad is gonna happen? Whatever. And it turned out a lot better than I'd actually envisioned it could. So that was a really positive lesson of this project. The next project that I tackled after my shoes were finished and I was starting to gear up to get into sewing again were some chemises. I needed some more chemises for my wardrobe. I think I only had 2 at the time. There was one style that I particularly liked, and that was my 1840s chemise, which I do have a video for. It's one of my earlier videos. And I wanted to make a replica of that one, as well as to make more of a Regency 18th century type of chemise, where it's more like what we'd call a shift, I guess, where it's just a bigger neckline, it's more simple. So I made 2 of those Regency simple shifts, and then I made one more of the 1840s style chemise, so that I ended up with 2 of each style. So now I have 4 chemises, and I made all of these in not a heavyweight linen, but a medium weight as opposed to lightweight, because I've made lightweight chemises in the past and I found that they wore holes really quick. And for something that's being worn every day, especially with the way I wear through clothes, I just went with the medium weight, and I'm super happy I did because these chemises are still going really strong in my wardrobe. And I have enough now that I can rotate them and be washing them regularly and wearing them every day. So it's really perfect. I love these chemises. I'm so happy I made them. I guess the lesson I'd say I learned from this project was how nice it is to have handmade undergarments, especially linen. I just love the feeling of linen being next to the skin. It just feels so nice and like so comforting and just nice and clean and crisp and fresh. I just love it. Okay, so my next project that I completed in 2021 were my hand-stitched 1790s stays. So these stays were actually started during 2020 when I was getting towards the end of my pregnancy and I was going a little stir crazy, just like if any of you have been pregnant before, I'm sure you know what I mean. The end of pregnancy where you're like, when's the baby going to be born? I want the baby to be born. And then the other half of you is like, I'm not ready for the baby to be born. How is this possible? How am I going to be having a baby? And it's just like this, like crazy roller coaster in your brain. So I was like, okay, I need something that's going to like take up a lot of time to just focus on. So I was like, perfect. I'll make these stays from Jill Salen's book. I'll hand stitch them. I'll do it. So I got a little bit done on them before my baby was born, but I didn't really like how the stitching was turning out. It looked a lot more rustic than I had wanted it to. After my baby was born, I kind of put them aside, but then I decided, you know what, I'll finish them. It kind of bothers me to not finish projects. I like to think of it as like my sewing feng shui. I don't like having unfinished projects lying around. I feel like it messes up my sewing feng shui, if that makes sense. So I finished it, took a long time. I'm happy I finished them, but the fit wasn't that great. So I would say the main lessons of this were, I guess, the importance of making a mock-up. Although I'm not really gonna blame myself because this was just a total like whim project anyway, and it was a good exercise. But yeah, making a mock-up is important. A mock-up or a lack of a mock-up can really make or break a project. I have never worn these stays since finishing them because the fit just wasn't great. Like they're too short for me. They don't give any tummy support and they just feel uncomfortable on pushing on my diaphragm. And they also, I didn't realize how much of a Regency shape 1790s stays could give. They look like 18th century stays. They look like they would be the same and give a conical shape, but they actually give a Regency bust shape. They give that like lifted shelf bust. If that's what you're into, definitely try this pattern. Okay, so my next make of 2021 was my leather bag. This leather bag was made from a kit that my husband bought for me from Tandy Leather. He surprised me with it, and I'm super, super happy that he bought it for me and that I made it. It's been a great diaper bag. It's really big, really roomy. I can just like toss stuff in it and it looks really nice. I feel like it looks like I have a cool designer bag, but actually I just made it myself and it feels really nice and heavy duty and like it will just last me a lifetime. I guess the lesson I learned from this was the importance of setting rivets properly, because the only issue I have had with it is occasionally I'll have a rivet pop out, which obviously means that it wasn't set properly because rivets are supposed to be something that's completely permanent. Actually, at this moment, there is a rivet on there that I need to replace, so that's a good reminder for me. Yeah, overall, I love this bag. I think it's nice to be able to make your own bags, like something that you're gonna use every day, in the same sense that it's nice making your own clothes. Okay, so now I'm gonna move on to what I consider one of my like milestone makes of 2021. And this was a project that I was planning for months in advance. I was wanting to make one of these from when I was pregnant, like way back in the summer of 2020. And I was just salivating over these. What it is a DIY dress form. So there's a company called Bootstrap Fashions, and they have for sale on their website a PDF pattern that they will make to your own measurements of a dress form that is your own measurement. So it's a really great, accessible way of beginner or relative beginner getting a dress form that's their own body shape and size. Yeah, so I guess the lesson that I learned from this is even if you can't do a project when you first get excited about it, for whatever reason, you just can't get to it. It's amazing what you can accomplish like in time. Like eventually you can get to that project and it can turn out even better than you expected. And I think the fact that I wasn't able to run out and do this project right away in 2020 when I wanted to do it because I was pregnant at the time, the fact that I had all that time to just kind of wait, I spent a lot of time researching, watching other people's videos of how they made theirs and seeing the common issues that kept coming up. And that gave me a much better feel of like a much better prediction of what might happen in my dress form, and just gave me an idea of how to work around those issues. So for example, I used sew-in interfacing rather than iron-in fusible interfacing, and I think that helped my dress form turn out a lot better. And I also had a better idea of how quickly the dress form can stretch and get bigger than your own body if you stuff it too much. So things like that. And I have been really happy. I haven't used my dress form a ton yet because I'm still kind of getting used to the fact that I have a dress form. I was used to sewing for years without one. So I still have to like remind myself, like, you know, Katherine, you have a dress form. You can fit this garment on the dress form, or you can drape that on the dress form. So I'm still kind of gearing up into getting used to using it, but I'm so happy I made it. And I definitely see myself in 2022 using this dress form a lot more for draping and fitting. Oh, an interesting point that I can make since I made this dress form video a long time ago was I made this when I was like 4 months postpartum. So obviously my body was still in a state of transition. It really has taken me like the full year to kind of get back to normal, or for my body to kind of like stop changing. And as such, in the past couple months, I was looking at her and being like, she looks a bit big for me now. So I actually performed surgery on her. I undid the zipper at the very bottom and I literally just like pulled out some stuffing. So I performed surgery and she had some weight loss. Now she matches the way my body is now as opposed to my 4 months postpartum body. So it's pretty interesting how that works. And definitely, I should say that's a big plus of this type of dress form, the fact that she has a zipper in the bottom and that it's so easy to just unzip and take out stuffing or add more in. It's not just about the fabric pattern of the dress form on the outside, it's also about how much stuffing is in, and you can really kind of alter the body shape based on the stuffing. So that's something to keep in mind actually about these dress forms. If you lose weight or if you gain weight, you can fix that with more or less stuffing. My next make was definitely another of my like milestone makes of 2021, I would say. It was my 18th century swim dress. So this was definitely what I would consider a very sort of unique project because I was completely melding together 18th century with total modern like stretch swim fabric. And on the surface, it seems like these things aren't very compatible, but it worked out really well. I'm actually really surprised at how well that one turned out. There was definitely some bumps along the way, so you can watch that video for more insight on that. But it turned out really well, and I wore that swim dress to death this summer. We went to the beach a lot, and I wore it every single time we went. And I loved the fact that it was both a swimsuit as well as a dress. And I just felt really chic when I wore it. And it was also really warm for swimming in. It was like a wetsuit. It was like, obviously I was wearing shorts, tight sort of swim leggings underneath. And yeah, it worked out really well. The only thing I wish I would have done differently is have a zipper in the center front rather than a closed center front. Number one, it makes breastfeeding easier. And number two, it would be a lot easier to get on and off with a zipper in the front because it is hard to get off, especially if it's wet. It's very hard to get off. That's the one downside. I guess sort of a negative thing I learned from that project, or maybe I could phrase it as being a positive thing, is just kind of confirming to myself how little I like working with modern, stretchy, synthetic fabrics and how much I love working with natural fibers. In fact, it was interesting during that project, I found I had a lot more inertia when it came to like, oh, gotta work on that, get in my sewing room, get working. And it just felt like there was a lot more inertia with that process. And honestly, I chalk it up to the fact that I didn't like the feeling of working with that fabric. It was just kind of viscerally like a yucky feeling of sewing with it. Whereas when I work with something like linen, it feels so good to like touch the linen, sew the linen. It just feels amazing. So that was something I learned, is just confirming to me the types of fabrics that I do and do not like working with. Okay, so the next project I did that I didn't make a video about was an orange pleated skirt that I made. I did post about it on Instagram. It's kind of like an ankle length skirt and it uses cartridge pleats, which was my first time making a skirt with cartridge pleats, but they're kind of like bigger cartridge pleats than what you normally think of. I guess I learned from this project the importance of trying new things, because I did try a hem facing for the first time and I really liked the shape that it gave to the skirt. And the importance of using substantial enough snaps, because on this one I used these really small snaps and there's just like 2 or 3 snaps on the waistband, and they have a propensity to just kind of pop off at the most inopportune moments. And for that reason I haven't worn it in a while, because I'm just a little scared about losing my skirt in public. So I might replace those snaps with some bigger ones so I can keep wearing it. Next was my Victorian corded corset, which definitely pushed my limits, not just from the corset making, but from the fact that this was the subject of my online course, Victorian Custom Corset Making, and making that course was really a big challenge. That was another make for me of 2021. That's a subject for another video or another time. But yeah, this corset was great. It taught me the importance of making multiple mock-ups to get the fit right and trying new things, and just the importance of having a well-fitting corset, especially if you're going to wear a corset every day, which I did wear that corset quite a bit. That corset was great for postpartum because of the spoon bust, but now that I'm kind of less postpartum, a lot less postpartum than I was at that time, I am feeling more drawn towards more of the straight fronted corsets with the dramatically curved back. I just feel like that's more conducive for what I want at this time. But yeah, that was a great corset make. My next make was my circle skirt. So this was my first ever collaboration with a fabric company where they sent me fabric for free. I made my skirt and then I talked about their fabric, and it was great fabric. It was cotton poplin. It was the lovely burnt orange color, and it was actually the first circle skirt I've ever made, which kind of surprised me. I was like, really? I haven't made a circle skirt before? That seems very odd. I better make one. So it was a full circle skirt. It was knee length. I guess it taught me the importance though of not being overly zealous in making the waist of your garments too small, because I still to this day usually have the top button undone when I'm wearing that skirt because it's just a bit too tight. But it's a nice skirt. I've worn it multiple times every single week since making it, so it was a success. So next was my brown silk taffeta circle skirt, which was made from the exact same pattern, but I did make the waist a bit bigger. And this was my first time using fabric from Burnley and Trowbridge. I was really impressed by their quality, especially of this particular silk fabric. It's just beautiful, it has a beautiful sheen, beautiful body and drape, and I will definitely be using it again for future skirts and future projects. The next project was my 18th century zippered cat stays. So it was an 18th century corset made with a zipper in the front and this cute sort of modern kitty canvas fabric that I also got from Modes for You. I do really like how it turned out. There's a couple things though that have made me just not want to wear it too much. I guess it kind of, because it doesn't have a busk at the front, it tends to kind of like curve out at the lower tummy. Just it kind of like pops out where the tabs are a bit. I don't really like that. The zipper stop at the top, I actually shortened the zipper, so I had to replace the zipper stop and it has since come off. And so I have to be careful every time I do up the zipper that I don't just pull the whole zipper pull off. So yeah, I'll be making more stays. I still haven't been able to quite come close to the dreamy standard of my maternity stays, which I made in 2020. Those were just a dream come true. They were literally like amazing. And I'm still looking to recreate stays that feel that nice, but are a non-maternity stays. My next project was my breastfeeding dress. Now I do have a whole video about this. In this project, I placed hidden zippers into princess seams for breastfeeding access. So I'm happy with how that particular detail turned out, but I don't like the dress and I haven't worn it at all since, which is a shame because it was nice fabric, but I don't like the shape of it. So if anything, this project taught me the importance of making projects that I know, silhouettes that I know that I like and that I know are flattering for me, because this dress, the silhouette is just not my thing. It's not flattering. My next projects, I'll just lump them together in one, were my 2 linen shirts that I made. So one of them was a gold linen sort of tuck-in tee with flared sleeves, and my other one was a blue linen blouse that only goes down to waist level and has a Peter Pan collar. I really love how both of these turned out. I guess it just taught me the importance of having basics good basics in my wardrobe, because I made these at a time when I realized I had a whole bunch of skirts and not very many shirts to go with them. So it just taught me the importance of just making the basics. Like, you don't always have to make crazy elaborate things. You can just make basic items as well, and that can be just as valuable or more valuable than those more complicated projects. Next, I made another shirt, or another blouse, I should say. It was my simple Edwardian tucked blouse. It's what I'm wearing right now. It has these tucks going all the way down the sleeve. It has this cool yoke shape, and I really like this shirt. I've worn it a lot since then. I guess it taught me the importance of using a pin tucker. The next time I make anything with a lot of pin tucks, I'm going to be using a vintage pin tucker to make the process easier, because the tucks did take a very long time. So my next project here, I was starting to get back into the shoemaking again. So I made my Victorian inspired ballet flats. These turned out wonderfully, and this project taught me the value of doing things the easier way, because if you'll remember, my first make of 2021 were these very complicated shoes that were hand welted. And so these ones, I purposely went out of my way to keep them as simple as possible and use a more modern construction method while still being inspired by historical style. And I finished them in about a week, so that was really good, and I really like these shoes. I haven't been able to wear them too much since then because it's gotten cooler, but I still really like them. My next project were my Victorian inspired Chelsea boots, which turned out awesome, and I do wear these a lot, and I really love how they turned out. I have learned a lot though from the process of making these, mostly about the proper selection of lasts to get a better fit. So I have a lot more shoemaking stuff on the horizon, just trust me on that one. My next pattern was my 18th century jacket, for which I draped my own pattern. This turned out great. I really like it. I guess if anything, I still need to research more about how to get that good fit in 18th century armholes where they can be tight but still feel good and still allow for movement. They do allow for movement, but they just feel a bit too tight. So that's something I need to work on for the future. And finally, the last sewing make of 2021 was my black silk corset with light blue flossing. I absolutely love how this turned out. This video will probably be posted before the video about that make, but just stay tuned for that because that's a really, really exciting video and I'm so excited to share it with you. I love how that corset turned out. I learned a lot from it. I learned mostly the value of creating historical recreations of projects where you just copy it detail for detail, and how that can really help you make a beautiful, stunning garment beyond what you would normally be able to make. Thanks so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. Check out the blog post linked below for the written article about this, and all my social media links are in the description. Leave your comments and questions below. What did you make in 2021? What are you working on now? I'd love to hear from you. See you all soon. Bye.